Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the underworld. The Star Wars Underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun, and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Whoa! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
Why am I not in the intro? I gotta come up with a snappy line.
What's up, Star Wars fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Star Wars Underworld Podcast. We are your source for the latest breaking Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion each and every week. And this week on the show, we're going to be talking about the Season 1 finale of The Acolyte. We're going to be answering your Ask the SWU questions and getting to a lot more. My name is Chris. Joining me, it's my good friend, Mr. Dominic Jones.
Hello, Chris. Hello, Ben. Hello, Hannah. Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm very glad to be here, and I'm especially glad that we are both live and recording right now, because for everybody, because nobody else would know if you're not on this podcast right now, we had a momentary snafu where we were about to go live and then realized we didn't have enough memory left on our StreamYard account to actually save and, release the podcast as a podcast later. So for a brief second there, we were live literally for 1 second on this link that Ben had created days ago and had left out there so people could know and get reminders set and be there early and ready. And what those people who did that got was 1 second of me going, wait, no, and then killing the live stream. But now the show is saved. We're here. We're going to talk about the Acolyte. It's going to be a great show.
Heck yes. Also joining us, it's Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
How's it going, everybody? Look, this week I only have one question for you all. You ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? Well, have you?
No. Tell it to me. Preferably in an opera setting.
It's not a story a Jedi would tell you.
That's why I've only been around Jedi.
Yeah.
Explains a lot. Very excited to get into that legend. Also joining us from the Raeside, it's Hannah.
G'day there. Great to be back for another show. Can't wait to get into it. I have many thoughts, good and bad, from this finale. But I am very, very excited to get into it. It's going to be a good day. Good day.
That's right. And there was a lot of conversation about how this show matches up with established canon. And in order to set the record straight and all those things, we have a special expert on the show. It's our senior tie-in materials correspondent, Mr. Chris Abbot from the channel Starrapter.
Yeah. I gotta make Matthew proud on this one. Tractor Beam Bros coming in to give us the good Lord dumps on this episode, because there's a couple of them. So I'm not trying to take too much thunder from Ben here, but I might have to help him out. I don't know.
It's Ben and Chris's connection corner. Connection in the corner.
Mine.
Well, Chris, thank you for being here, and we'll dive into the episode proper in just a minute. But give us your overall thoughts. What you've been thinking about the Acolyte leading up to the finale.
Leading up, this is a show I've been waiting for a while, because we've been stuck in the same kind of 50-60 year period of Star Wars storytelling forever. So this is the first real big piece of media, at least, that has gone outside of that. So I've been, ever since 2020 when it's got announced, I've been over the moon. And then we learned it's in High Republic, and me and Dom and Ben and Hannah, everybody's like reading High Republic. So we're starting to get into like, oh, this is gonna be cool. How does this all tie in? We have this really nice era that has already been established. How does this connect, and what can we learn about the Skywalker saga with this? So I was very excited to get into this just from the precedent of all these really big things happening around this. And then as far as experiencing it, the first 2 episodes I really enjoyed. I think that premiere really got me in, but it's been a bumpy road, if I'm being honest. Like the first 4 episodes of the series were kind of like make or break. Going into episode 5, I was like, this is halfway through the season. Episode 4, as you guys said, I agree with you. Episode 4 was kind of a little off for me, so I started worrying a little bit. And then episode 5 was like one of the best moments in the last 10 years for me with Star Wars. The choreography, the really cool Sith stuff, the amazing action, and the shock and all of just these Jedi and everybody just getting off like, wow, Lucasfilm is doing this. Okay, this is a new era for Star Wars, kind of. And then we get to the other side of that with some character stuff in episode 6, and then episode 7 really worried me a lot. So then going into this finale, I'm like, okay, even if this finale for me was like a 10 out of 10. Overall, I'm still going to have issues with this season. Do I want it to continue up before the finale? Yes, I would still like to see it continue, because this is a cool space in Star Wars that needs to be explored more than just one season. And going into it, I really felt like this needed more time to breathe even before the finale. It's based on episode count and run times on the episodes. So that's where my thought was going into this finale was, there's a lot of stuff that Leslie and the team have to really hit. They have to really hit a home run in this one. There's so many things to tie up. Of course, there's going to probably be more mysteries, as we've seen, but that's where my headspace was. Okay, I'm a little bit worried, and that's not the kind of way I want to go into a Star Wars finale, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll get into whether or not the finale was worth worrying about. But one thing I do want to say is, one aspect of the show I think has been a real success, and now that the season is done, I feel safe to say this, is its connection with the High Republic publishing initiative. I was thinking back earlier today for something else that I'm working on, to the High Republic panel from Celebration London. And Chris, you and I were both there. We were sitting there at London. It was the afternoon. It was sort of the panel we'd been most looking forward to that day. And it played out like a regular High Republic publishing panel for the first 50 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then they said, oh, we've got another surprise. First, we're going to kill the live stream. And they killed the live stream. So you can't actually see this part of the panel. You just have to take our word for it that it existed. But Leslie Headland comes out and talks about how much she wanted this series to connect to the books and to feel like a continuation of that era. And then, of course, she announced that Vernestra Rowe was going to be part of the series. And I think, Vern has wound up being much more of a factor in the show than I was expecting, although in a much different way. But this feels like it's a continuation in the look, the style, the storytelling, and even what they're doing with Vernestra, even though, as we'll get into, it's very different from the character who's in the books. It is 100 years later, and 100 years changes a person. And I think we can, as I've talked about previously on the show, we can read into her motivations in this show and place them in the context of what she's experienced in the books, and it does work together. It paints a rather tragic and upsetting picture if you love Vern as a youngster in the books, but it does connect very, very well. So that's something I think, in terms of really doing multimedia storytelling in Star Wars, I think it's safe to say this show has been a complete success on that front. Other fronts we'll get into. Was it as big a success? We'll discuss. We'll talk about it. But first, we're going to plug some things. Chris, take it away.
All right. So let's go right through this. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you punch that subscribe button. Chewy, you can super chat with us right now. You can also become a channel member to support the show throughout the month when we're not on air. If you're listening to the show on your favorite podcast app, please subscribe and review over there. You can check out our Discord. The link is in the show notes, the description of this video. We got game nights, we've got watch parties, lots of fun things going on over there. And make sure you follow us at the SWU on social media. And last but not least, check out all the other shows we have going on our network. We have Eye on Cannon and Eye on Cannon and Tractor Beam on this channel, and then we have the Raeside. Hannah has her own channel, and then Tales from Beyond the Galaxy also have their own channel. So you make sure you check out that stuff over there.
All right, let's get into things. We're talking about The Acolyte, Season 1, Episode 8, titled The Acolyte, written by Jason McAuliffe and directed by Hanel M. Culpepper. Let's start this off how we have for the previous 7 episodes. Go around the table, give some initial impressions, and Ben, one more time for Season 1 of The Acolyte. We're going to throw it to you first. What did you think of The Acolyte, the episode?
Yeah, so I mean, listening to Starrapter talk about the season overall, I was kind of like, after this episode, kind of looking back at the overall season, how I felt about it, and I think I echo a lot of your sentiments there, Chris. But at the same time, I think this episode, I think it might be the best of the season, honestly, for me. I think it encapsulates everything great about this show. And also, I mean, it's also like almost to a frustrating extent to your, some of the stuff is where was this all season? I really wanted every episode to be like this. And I don't want to be like that because I want to appreciate all, but really the standouts for me this season were episode 5 and this episode, and everything else was not up to snuff, in my opinion. But I'm not going to gripe on that. I'm not going to gripe on that. Okay, I'm going to stay focused on this episode because I really, really did enjoy this episode because there's so many things that are great about this episode. I mean, from freaking another great lightsaber duel to all the emotional bits to the resolution and the not resolution, which is a lot of cliffhangers here, and also freaking Darth Plagueis the Wise showed his face for the first time ever. That was pretty darn cool as well.
Yes. Hannah, I'm about to ask you for your initial impressions. I just have to say real quick, though, to Joel in our live chat, you've wasted your money, pal, because Ben beat this I think word for word, this exact super chat. Joel says, guys, I have
we're
a very
the same
important...
mind, Joel. I'm sorry. I'm on the show. I was here first.
Joel says, guys, I have a very important question for you all. Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? All right, Hannah, what did you think of the finale?
Yes, well, I am continuing my streak of being very similar in mindset to Ben. We are seemingly having the same opinions here. This episode, I thoroughly enjoyed. Standalone by itself, just this from start to end, was really well paced in the action, the dialogue, the information, the exposition that happened in this episode. I felt was so balanced that what we got to learn and find out, but also just to enjoy in terms of that action, I just thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I found myself really engrossed in pretty much all of the scenes. But I have to say a but there, because it just leads me to have that question: where was this type of pacing and storytelling throughout the rest of the season? Which seems like a bit of an ignorant thing to say, because finales are always meant to be, the most exciting and action packed, or not even action packed, just most interesting part of a season, really, because you're tying up all the loose ends, you're seeing what all the characters doing. So I feel like naturally it's going to be the most interesting part of the season. But I really do think, in terms of the storyline, I think the Vanestra kind of look into her character and what she's up to should have been a much stronger story point through the season. I mean, we got a total of her on the screen for about 2 minutes for the season, but then this whole finale is all about where she landed with her character and with the situation. So I would have really preferred for that to be a lot stronger throughout the show. And that's just an example, but I think all the rest of the story points of the relationships and dynamics of everything could have been told in this kind of dynamic of little bit of action, the exposition and dialogue was just really on point in this finale that I just do not see at all to be at that quality in the rest of the episodes. So yeah, I sound a bit of a downer there, but it's because I actually really, really enjoyed this episode. I just wish it was to this level for the rest of the season, for the whole season. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair. I definitely echo some of that too. Starrapter, your thoughts on episode 8?
Yeah, another positive one here. I really think that this also could have been the best episode of the season. Not only did it have great choreography, like the main big thing for me from episode 5, but it really got down to the drama. Whether it be Osha and May at the last scene, whether it be Soul and Chimera, I for once actually felt some stakes in the story, because at that point I finally was won over by the characters from the 8 episodes. I finally did start to care, which was another gripe I've had like earlier in the season. Like, I just don't care about these characters that much. They're just not intriguing enough. But then we finally got there. So that overall feeling of, okay, the culmination is here. I like the setting a lot. Now I can finally see the full picture of what Leslie Handlin was doing, putting it back on Brendock, doing all these flashbacks. It's a really kind of good, impactful, figurative way of dealing with the past, but also the future at the same time. We're going back to these memories that these characters had this pivotal moment in their lives in this mining facility, seeing how that all plays out. But just the idea of these inner little battles, sister versus sister, master versus so-called Sith, and these different things that are just pretty epic in design. There's a couple little nitpicks I have here and there. Like, I don't mean to pick on your favorite mascot here, but Basil, I'm not sure what he was doing in this episode.
What was he doing?
He was saving the day, as he always does, because
he was the acolyte. He was the acolyte of this show. Are you kidding? He was touching every person. He had no allies. He was running everyone's plans.
He was public enemy number 1.
Yes.
I will say when the credits finally rolled and Basil was still alive, I breathed a massive sigh of relief, because if you remember last week, I was like mentally preparing myself for the fact that I thought this character was going to die, because I did not see a way out for Basil. But I'm glad he made it and will be back for season 2. There, you guys didn't see it, but there was actually a secret title card that said Basil will return in the Acolyte season 2.
Oh man, it was nestled between the Hungarian and the Turkish
credits.
Credits, yeah.
Yeah, but only if you spoke both Hungarian and Turkish could you translate what it said. Chris, your thoughts on the film?
Okay, so I have a lot of difficulty describing how I felt about what was for a while just called episode 8 on Disney Plus. I actually was informed it was called The Acolyte when I looked at our show notes, because I haven't gone back to it since it was called episode 8, which it seemed to be called for more than 24 hours, I feel like. But in order to help me, I have our good trusted friends here, Oreos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out, if my Oreos are bled or not, if there was some anger put into them. And then that's going to, help me explain myself, how I feel about this episode. So, look at this. Somebody went to town on these. All right. We got some.
You'll use Sith Acolyte there.
That's right. Okay. So, all right. So, good. Well, I was incredible. The anger has flown through me. Oh my gosh. So, what's so awesome about this episode is it finally gave me personally the one thing that I've wanted from this show. Because if you're gonna tell me that there's a show called The Acolyte that's gonna be about Sith and it's gonna take place, a few generations before the Phantom Menace, my brain only goes into one place, which is, what were the Sith doing a few generations before the Phantom Menace? Well, that's Darth Plagueis. That's like the only logical thing that pops into my head. And that's basically, I've been substituting in my brain the alternate title of this show, Darth Plagueis, for years. And so that's really the only thing that I truly wanted from the show. I couldn't care less what else was in it. And I love the show. I think without Plagueis, it would have been great. I think without Plagueis, this finale would have been great. But having that moment and it was just that was the cream inside the Oreo cookie. That was your red Sith cream in there. Like it was incredible. So that moment was a huge moment for me. I just absolutely freaked out when I saw those fingers around the clasping around the cable. I'm like, I know whose fingers that is. And then they show his face. I'm like, yes, let's go. I was so excited. And then I was pumped for the other cameo as well. Seeing the back of Yoda's head at the end was a really great way to end it. So those two things just sent it to another level. But in general, yeah, the pacing was perfection of this episode, as has been mentioned, and the action sequences were just absolutely dynamic and incredible. And yeah, that lightsaber bleeding moment was definitely an all-time top-tier Star Wars scene. Like super cool to finally actually see that happening in real time. So cool. So I love amazing initial impressions of this episode for me. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. I think the finale was truly excellent. I think Hannah, you said a few minutes ago, you're like, where was this sort of level of quality, or where was this storyline at other points in the season? I had that thought multiple times in this episode, and the first one was during the Vernestra scene with the Senator Ray in court, David Harewood. And as that scene was playing out, as I'm watching it go, these were the words that came through my head. Where the fuck has this show been all season? Where has this been? This is so good. This is so good. Why wasn't this here? Why wasn't this part of it? And then I had that thought a couple more times in the episode. And I've liked this season. I've liked the season a lot. But it just showed how much more potential there was. How much potential I feel like was left on the table. And that's why I really want a second season now.
Yes.
Because they've shown what they can do. They've shown it. Now do it. Make every episode like this, and then you'll be the same quality as the show on my t-shirt, which is Andor. Because I think this show had the potential to be there, and it just was a little bit muddled. But this finale brought everything together. The same way Andor finales, the end of each of those story arcs, would bring everything together and pay off all the different storylines. So yes, I loved it. Bring on a second season and make the second season more like this and less like, say, episode 4.
What's blowing my mind about this show is all the media around it. And, the talk about, it's built to be okay as a story. If it's just one season, it still, finishes enough story threads and that main character arc with the Jedi that, you don't necessarily have to have a second season that can stand on its own. You have that talk. You have the talk about, it's not, just a given that the show's going to be renewed, that Ahsoka was potentially struggling to get a second season and finally get it. And the show might need to wait a while to know for sure if it's going to happen. There's a talk about, Disney Plus, maybe restricting some of their budgets. There's all these things happening. And at the same time, you compare that to what we saw on screen. And to me, without all that noise happening in the media and the interviews and the rumors and all that stuff, without all of that, just looking at the show and analyzing it internally, it's clearly a setup for something else to me. It's clearly an introductory story that was paced very slowly because it was just an introduction. They clearly were not trying to put a tentpole firmly in place for the entire era. They were just building a foundation. And there's just so many hints of this political intrigue that's happening with the Jedi in the Senate. There's these hints of the Sith intrigue that's going on with Plagueis. How is he related to Darth Smiley, Mr. Khmer? Like, what is going on with that? Like, what's going to happen with the twins now? There's all these things that were set up that were so fascinating. And just, that cliffhanger at the end of, Yoda coming in and, okay, now Yoda's going to have a say in this. What's going to happen? How is he going to relate into this? Like, to me, it was so clearly set up as, just an introductory season to get us into the real, big stuff for season 2, that it just, it's so kind of grating and dissonant to me to have all these rumors and all this media flying around saying, this might be all we get. Like, it's like 2 completely different things. And I just really hope that, that all that stuff ends up being, just kind of talk, because it's just like, to me, I think where has this show been all the time? I think in season 2, that's where it's been, and we're still waiting for it.
Yeah, I think you're right, and like that narrative that was sort of self-created of, this could just be a one and done season. I think either that's a response to something internal, like some sort of Disney decision making of like, what, we're moving away from Disney Plus, Star Wars on Disney Plus, where we just want to do movies again. So let's put a pin in this idea of multiple seasons. We're not going into stuff telling you we're going to give you multiple seasons. So either it was a little bit of that, or it was an intentional fake out, so that we would feel like we're going to see the story told across these 8 episodes, and that might be it. So then when you get to the finale and you see Yoda, you see Plagueis, you see it ends with Osha going with the stranger. All of that stuff is, feels more surprising, because you're thinking, oh, this could be the end. And then you wrap it up. You wrap up the episode. You end with that stinger about Yoda, so that everybody leaves it going, oh, there better be a second season. I remember hearing a story about the show Arrested Development, which would end every episode. Yeah, you ready?
Yeah, this is a great comparison. Oh, not comparison.
Yeah, it would end every episode with a next time on Arrested Development, and it wouldn't actually be a preview for the next episode. It would just be a little joke. But they did it in the pilot. They did it in the pilot episode, so that when they showed it to test audiences who were sort of like lukewarm on the show, they're like, I don't know if I get it. I don't know if it's that funny. They saw the next time and were like, oh, well, I want to see what happens next. I'm into it. And so that's why part of the reason the show got greenlit and ran for three seasons in its initial run was because they kept doing those next time teasers to get people to keep tuning in with little jokes. And that's basically the Yoda thing at the end of this, right? Like the episode is over. And then then the doors open one more time and there's Yoda. And it's just sort of like, if you guys like this show, if you talk about it enough, you watch it enough, you pump the numbers, you get people to tune in, we'll give you more. And not only will we give you more, we'll give you Yoda.
Please,
you guys love Yoda.
I love Yoda. I gotta say one thing, guys, just so you know, that if I ever, disappear, remember that my credits are in the Jogan fruit stand.
there's always money in the Jogan fruit stand.
That's such a deep cut. Oh wow.
Just gonna do Arrested Development Star Wars jokes for the rest of the show. Let's dive into the episode, and let's talk about this scene between Vernestra and Senator Rayencourt, played by David Harewood. Hannah, let's throw to you first. What did you think of this exchange, this back and forth between the representative of the Jedi and the representative of at least a voice in the Senate?
This is the best part of the show.
Mm-hmm.
This is like the third best scene of this show. The first being when Vernestra was on the hologram phone to that random senator. Mm-hmm. And they were like, you guys are being shady. What, can we check it out? And then she was like, yeah, hangs up. So that was the best scene of the Acolyte, in my opinion. This is a close third. And I think it's because, and I kind of harped on this the past few weeks, of like, it is showing that close relationship that the Jedi Order and the Senate, and it's asking that question, should that be or should that not be the case? Should these two entities, corporation, that's not really the word, but should these two entities really be watching over each other, or should they be entirely separate? And this is begging that question. So I really love this whole entanglement of this senator. What's his name? What's his name again?
Rayencourt.
Rayancourt. That sounds like me as a senator. Rayancourt? Oh my god.
Well, that's what happens when you sue somebody. Oh yeah, Ray's in court today.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. But this was such a great introduction. It's like, again, like broken record, but it's just like, what, this should have been like a through storyline through the show. Like, while this like weird murder mystery solo show, whoever the hell flip you over, that story goes on. And then we always cut back to see what Vern is trying to like handle with and deal with in the Jedi Order. And it's these senators that are kind of being too nosy into the Order. Really great storyline. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think we talked about this last week, that this, if you had included this as a B or C plot in every episode, then it puts everything else into context. It makes everything else be more prioritized. And because that's what it does in this episode. You understand where Vernestra's coming from. You understand why she feels the need so desperately to wrap up this investigation, because this guy who actively is telling her that he does not like the Jedi, and we'll get into what he says because he says some real interesting things and he may actually be right, but he is actively telling her, I do not like you and I do not like your order. Therefore, I am going to do whatever I can to undermine you. All of a sudden, agree or disagree with what she does. And I think most people would disagree with what she does. But you get it. She needs this book closed ASAP as possible. She cannot allow this to keep going, because he's coming for her. He's coming for the Jedi. And if that was running through every aspect of this series, every episode of this series, I think you have a more cohesive storyline. Everything that everybody does is now looked at through a different lens. And yeah, that was, like I said, where the bleep was this for the rest of the season. I think that makes the show stronger. And most shows have B and C plots. Like it's very rare that you have a show that I guess every episode of this would have a B plot, I guess, but like very rarely have shows that don't go past an A and B plot. Usually you have a C, D, E plot, or your Game of Thrones and you get into F, G, and H plots. But that keeps the show feeling fresh. It keeps the show moving. It gives it new dynamics and new perspectives. And at points, I think this show suffered from not having those, because we were just with the same characters, having the same arguments and the same dynamics over and over again until we started killing off half the characters.
Yeah. And the thing is too, like, I think they thought that they were putting enough of it into it, because a lot of the scenes that involve Vernestra, there were hints of this going on in the issues with the Senate and stuff. And there was mention leading up to this scene, priming us for it in at least a few of the episodes prior. But the issue is, I think it moved along so slowly that we didn't get that full payoff until the finale. And like you say, it should have been a little bit earlier, and maybe we could have progressed on it a little bit more. So I think in their heads they were thinking, okay, we don't want to overcrowd the story too much. Like, we want to have it mainly be from Osha and May's perspective, and I get that. But I think maybe they were a little too cautious about weaving that in, because there were threads for this.
Yeah.
But they were very subtle. They were just a line here and a line there, pretty much until this point.
Yeah, they were real blink and you miss it moments until this scene. And you have an actor like David Harewood in there. He brings a gravitas and he brings a real sense of importance to these scenes. Ben, I'm going to read you what Senator Rayancourt says, and I want to get your reaction to it. He says, I think the Jedi are a massive system of unchecked power, posing as a religion, a delusional cult that claims to control the uncontrollable, not the Force, your emotions. You project an image of goodness and restraint, but it's only a matter of time before one of you snaps. And when, not if, that happens, who will be strong enough to stop him? Now I'm going to phrase this like a college essay. Discuss.
Thesis, please.
Yeah.
I mean, he's right though. he's not wrong. Like the guy is, it's the Sam Wilson meme of he's out of line, but he's right. Like the guy's making a lot of good points here. And it's funny when, because obviously the big rumor, the big thing that everyone was talking about leading into this is what if he's Plagueis? What if he's the Sith Lord? And that's kind of what I was thinking, like, okay, he's gonna show up at the end of the episode and he's gonna be maybe voicing the character, maybe he is the Sith Lord or whatever else, and I think he would have killed that too. This is way more interesting and I think a way better choice for him. Just because when he's talking and when I'm listening, I'm like, this guy's not a Sith Lord. He's not a Force user. He's not pulling the strings. He's just a guy. He's just a guy who's fed up, who sees through all this BS and is actually, yes, he is an antagonist and maybe he's going about it a bit wrong way, but we know the whole series is about Jedi covering up crap and not doing the right thing. And even though Vernestra makes Sol to be out a monster, he's still not innocent. He still did some pretty terrible things. Vernestra herself has been doing some shady stuff, and maybe it's all, good intentions to the hell, all that Primrose Path stuff. But like ultimately,
good intentions to the hell. that classic saying.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, we're left in this scenario where like the Jedi are up a creek without a paddle, and I like that. I really hope they bring it back. Like I do like if we get a season 2, like this is what I want from it. Like you can leave out the Sith stuff, like you can leave out the Jedi stuff. I just want this inner politics stuff of this guy taking down the Jedi and taking them down a peg, or maybe perhaps being part of the reason why they are so in tune and so ingrained in the politics is because they have to get deeper into it. They have to get in the mud and really make it work and be as open and honest as possible, even though they don't want to be. It's just like, I agree with Hannah. This is one of the best scenes of the series so far.
Mm-hmm. Hannah, speaking of you, I believe we're about to lose you for the rest of the show
in a short moment, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yes.
So before you go, give us your final thoughts and score out of 10 for this episode.
Goodness me. I mean, this episode I think really showcased what this era and the intrigue of this era could really show. And in the discussion of the season 2, I agree with Chris. I think all these kind of repercussions of what has happened here is explored more. Again, I do want to focus on how good this episode was, particularly the fight action, the conflict with Sol and I'm forgetting everyone's name, Sol and Kumir. That action piece was awesome. That like very martial art, like slow-mo, like force jump off that bridge was just unreal. That was so cool. I was like, this is just such a great stylistic thing that I really enjoyed. And I think that actually it's funny that you do that, Starrapter, because I think that was my audible reaction. I was just like, oh yeah. I was like, yeah, this is cool. So I really loved that. I think the only other thing about this episode that actually still caught me, but I've been like this the whole season, is the May Osha storyline. I get it. It's very obvious, like what's happened, but also I don't emotionally connect to what happened. And I almost felt awkward that I didn't emotionally connect to it, because I felt like we had this big triumphant moment at the end of the episode and they're like crying and hugging, and I felt so awkward because I was just like, I felt like I was there with them, just like watching them being like because I just didn't I didn't connect to what where they were at as characters. I feel like even though we have had a lot of them through the season, I didn't feel like I knew them enough or understood them enough to believe their cause. And in saying that, I do think it was a smart decision to have the switch of Osha, and I found that really interesting that she has gone down this path that made sense. Her finding out about the truth about Sol was really important, and I think that was a a cool tone change for her character. But I think the flip flop in the middle of the season confused me. I wish it was just one's good, one's bad, definitively the whole season, and then this finale we get the big switch. I felt like that would have made more sense to me for these characters, as well as May, as having that switch and the mind wipe. Interesting mind wipe. But I'll listen on the replay what you guys break down about the mind wipe situation. But overall for the episode, I actually really, really liked it. I've got a lot more negative things to say about the rest of the season, but this episode as a standalone, I think I got to give it probably about an 8 out of 10, which is quite high for me for this season. I really quite liked it. And for a finale, good finale.
Yeah. There we go. 8 out of 10 from Hannah. Everybody go subscribe and watch the Raeside for more.
Thank you.
Great Star
And
Wars.
get that awesome hat. I think this is the first time that you've worn the new hat.
Yes, this is the new hat, but it's not even out yet. So
oh my goodness! Wow.
So this is like a teaser of the news that is about to drop.
For everybody listening, it says always choose the Raeside.
There you go. Not the light or dark. Choose the Raeside. All right, gang. Enjoy the rest of the discussion. Good to see you, Starrapter. And I'll
good to see you, Hannah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Anna. All right, let's keep talking about the scene that we've been talking about. And the Starrapter, we'll go to you next, because we've sort of gone around a bit about the scene, but I want to get your sort of overall take on the back and forth between Vern and Ray and Court.
Well, I'm going to be the complete opposite to Ben on this one.
Ooh.
I literally thought he could have been a Sith Lord. I was like, the way he is talking, I'm just like, whoa. Like at this point, I don't think we've seen Plagueis at this point of the episode, right?
No, not yet. No.
So that's why I was thinking that, because I'm like, there's got to be another like master out there or something. And I know this guy from CW, Supergirl with Martian Manhunter. So I know that this guy, he's been involved with some action heavy things. And I'm like, this guy's looking in good shape. Like he could be a Sith Lord down the line at some point. So yeah, just the way that it really, like you said, Dom, it built up the drama of like the gravitas of this actor, David Hayward, coming in and just going at it with Vernestra. And I appreciated just how blunt he was about it and about how you just said it as it was, and just calling her out on it. And in that similar fashion that like I'm hearing like something like Palpatine would say in a way. Like this is like, it brought me back to like, you know, the prequels with all the maneuvering and whatnot. So yeah, I kind of was like, oh, let me keep watching this character, because for right now he seems like he might be like another Palpatine-esque character.
Yeah. I had a sort of similar thought, because you know, like everybody else, I'd bought into the, you know, the speculation that David was going to be playing Darth Tenebrous or, you know, somebody like that. So then when he's in that scene, I'm like, okay, all right, the Sith really go all in on the Senator thing. They this guy and then Palpatine later. This is their move. They're in the halls of power early on. After watching the episode and knowing that, you know, the Sith twist that was coming was that we were going to get that one shot of Plagueis. Watching the scene again, I'm like, no, this guy, I'm back with Ben on this. I'm like, this guy is not a Sith Lord. He just is a true believer in a different point of view than the rest of us have. He looks at the Jedi and he sees the problems with them and he says them out loud. And, you know, the part I think that, you know, hits the hardest of what he says is, you know, it's only a matter of time before one of you snaps. And when, not if that happens, who will be strong enough to stop him? And, you know, as the audience, we're all thinking about Revenge of the Sith. We've seen Anakin. We've seen him do this. That, you know, it's not just one of them. It's the best one. It's the greatest one. It's the chosen one who snaps. So who is strong enough to stop him? And, you know, he talks about emotions and, you know, try to control the uncontrollable. And that, you know, the Jedi in this era are very focused on keeping their emotions restrained. You know, we look at Yord, who's kind of, you know, held up as like one of the like prototypical Jedi of this era. And he's just like the most uptight guy you've ever seen in your life. He's like, he's refused to show any emotion. He refuses to even hint that he has emotions. And so when Ravencourt asks the question, who will be strong enough to stop him? The answer is in the earlier part of his question. You claim to control the uncontrollable, your emotions. Luke is strong enough to stop Vader, to stop Anakin. And it's not because he's more skilled with a lightsaber. It's not because he has more midichlorians. It's not because of anything to do with skill or talent or inherent natural ability. Luke saves Anakin with love. And love is an emotion. And so the Jedi have to, and this is the lesson that Luke learns in the original trilogy, is they can't hide from their emotions. They can't run from their emotions. They can't suppress their emotions. They need to listen to their emotions. They need to act on their emotions, but they need to act on them in a way that is, positive and moves them forward, that helps them. Fear and anger, they talk about them as negative emotions in this episode. And that is true. If you act solely on fear or solely on anger, you will, that leads to the dark side. But, when you're afraid, usually that's because something is wrong. So you have to listen to your emotions. You have to act on your emotions to a certain extent. And that's what Luke ultimately does. That's what Luke ultimately figures out. And that's how he saves the day.
Yeah, that is so very true. The logic that I don't understand in take Rita Court's stuff is okay, so if he's saying he's worried about one of the Jedi snapping, you can kind of reduce that to a person who is who uses the Force and can use the Force snapping. And that the Force is not exclusive to the Jedi. Perhaps he might be mistaken in that regard, since you're not seeing Force users outside the Jedi commonly at this point. And if you do, the Jedi know about it and keep it internal, and that's probably what they're kind of trying to do. But the issue is if he's worried about a Force user snapping, then the difference between having the Jedi Order and not having the Jedi Order is if you don't have the Jedi Order, then there's certainly no one to protect you from that. Whereas if you do have the Jedi Order, at least you stand somewhat of a chance because you have a group of trained Force users that can fight on your side. So by his logic, I would think it would make more sense to strengthen the Jedi Order to hold the Force users in check that might potentially be a threat to democracy, to the Republic. And, it is true that Anakin, did turn, but at the same time, it would have been a lot faster for Palpatine to take over if he didn't even have the Jedi in the picture. If the Jedi had been dissolved by that point, or greatly disempowered or overregulated by the Republic, then the whole thing would have played out the same way. It would have been the clones versus the Separatists. That conflict would have been used to give him emergency powers. He would have then transferred into the Empire. The only difference is you wouldn't have had the opportunity of Yoda and Mace and all those people attempting to stop him. He would have just straight up done it without even anyone physically trying to stop him at all. So you think that maybe there's flaws on both sides. There's not just perhaps a flaw in the Jedi and, thinking that they're all powerful and being blind to the potential real threats, but there also is a flaw in the Republic being afraid of the Jedi when ultimately the Jedi were the best chance the Republic had to protect itself from Palpatine.
This is definitely a guy who, if he lived 100-ish years later, he would have been when Order 66 goes down, he's like, well, he would just shrugged and been like, okay, there you go. One of them snapped, and they were playing us the whole time, and they were actually all evil. So good, they're all wiped out now.
He'd probably be a separatist.
They
probably
I'm curious what planet he's from.
Yeah, he'd probably be a separatist. He'd probably look at them and be like, yeah, let's get away from that sort of unregulated crazy cult, whatever the wording is exactly.
And then he would have been a part of the rebellion because he would have seen Darth Vader and come in and be like,
that's another one.
And then when he's in the briefing room and Jan Dodonna stands up and goes, "May the Force be with you all," and you'd be like, "What the hell is this? I'm in a cult.
I can't get away from this."
I love this image. I love this image of just this guy constantly like, Jedi everywhere. So this is the thing. Like, I think, Chris, you're right. I think his problem might not even be with the Jedi. It might just be with the existence and the concept of the Force. Yeah. And, it is a power or not a power, but it's something that is ununderstandable. Palpatine even calls it the great mystery in Revenge of the Sith. And so this is something he doesn't understand and is therefore afraid of. Which, I think a lot of people can relate to that. And so his choice is to try and diminish it as much as possible and bring it under Republic control so that the Jedi basically just become, beat cops. Like, I think that's his best version of this, is that way they're really not a big deal. He probably wants to get it down to the numbers are way low. Like he wants to stifle this as much as possible, and would probably feel the same way about the Sith, the Witches of Brendok, the Night Sisters, the Bardotan Great Masters, and all of the different Force wielders out there in the galaxy. Starrapter, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, as far as when it comes to a character in this power, coming up with these ideas is just something fresh for Star Wars. There's a lot of good ideas in this show. There's a lot of great ideas, stuff that I've been reading about in the books for a while and reading about in the comics. Mm-hmm. So to see this actually get onto the screen now and to see the nuance, to see it's not just you guys have talked about it. Now I'm starting to see the full picture. Yeah, like this makes more sense. This is a more interesting aspect of this guy's not just a guy hiding in plain sight as a Sith. He's just the everyday man that is so far separated that he wants to see things justified to be more understandable and So I really enjoy this perspective on things. I think it's great to see. It's original. It's unique, and yeah, of course Season 2, let's see more of this, because I feel like there wasn't enough. Like we get all this in the last episode. Again, I think we keep repeating ourselves, but it's just for me the same thing. You got this in the last episode. Where was this the rest of the season? There was one holocom thing. There was the first episode, our political rivals. So yeah, we got that through line, but it was just too under the surface most of the point.
Yeah. And like, I don't know if I said it earlier, but like one of the reasons why I thought this guy is definitely not a Sith Lord is the fact that he's a jerk, and the Jedi don't like him, and he's actively pushing against the Jedi, and they are wise to what he's doing. A Sith Lord would not do that. A Sith Lord would do what a certain Sith Lord does about 100 years later, which is, the Jedi are so great, and there are the heroes, and would you fight a war for me? Like that kind of Sith Lord. Whereas this guy's just honest. Like he has nothing to hide.
Yeah. He's right about some things and misguided in others. Like when he says you project an image of goodness, like look at the Jedi. Go back and look at when Yord and his Padawan arrive in the first episode, and they show up in their gold robes, and they're like regal as they're walking down that Trade Federation ship. Like they are just trying, everything about them screams, we are the heroes. We are, trust us. We are the hero. Like that's everything about them. It almost has kind of like a holier than thou vibe to it.
And then Yord gets the Nemodians and they're like, he's like reveling, like smiling in the idea that he might mind trick them to do what they want. Like they're abusing their power and being oppressors, really, and coming in a situation going like, I could you could cooperate, or I could, make you cooperate, and that's not cool.
Exactly. He also, I think, states the theme or the overarching theme of this show, I think. he says when you're looking up to heroes, you don't have to face what's right in front of you. And when he said that, all I could think about was The Last Jedi and the reaction people had to Luke in that movie. And I think there's been some similar reactions to this show in the sense that people look at the Jedi as perfect heroes. They're meant to be like these heroes from myth who always come in and do the right thing. And I don't think that's what I don't think that's the story. I don't think that's ever been the story. But with the prequels, it can be like, oh well, they were tricked. They were tricked into doing all this bad stuff, and then they fell because of it. It was all Palpatine. It was all a trick. This show and a lot of the things that Luke says in Last Jedi are saying, nah, it was more than just Palpatine tricking these guys. There was more to it. They were flawed in their own ways, and their flaws opens the door for Palpatine to walk through and wipe them out. As Luke says, at the height of their power, they allowed Darth Sidious to rise, create the Empire, and wipe them out. And we're sort of seeing the Jedi pretty close to the height of their power be pretty blind to a lot of things and make a lot of, compromises in their values that they shouldn't. Because, I mean, let's talk about Vernestra. She just straight up frames Saul for mass murder. Did Saul do things wrong in his life? Yes. Should Saul have faced consequences for the mistakes he made on Brendok? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Did Saul murder half a dozen Jedi? No. And should he die with the Jedi murderer tag next to his name? No. Starrapter, let's go to you. What did you think of Vernestra, this character we know as a teenager in the High Republic, becoming, the ultimate coverer up of crimes in the show, making her someone she calls a friend the scapegoat for everything?
Yeah, this is one of those things where a lot of time has passed since we've seen this young, spry, 15-year-old Jedi Knight prodigy running around on a planet saving kids from the Nile. Yeah. And it's very curious. Obviously, she's been through a lot. We got this whole Nile conflict, the Great Hyperspace Disaster, which was referenced in this show, which was awesome, by the way. Brendok being one of those planets affected. But yeah, it just goes to show you, in an entire lifetime, how somebody could really, their mindset, their personality just really changes. She becomes so steadfast. She is like the person you would think of as like, okay, the prequel kind of Jedi at this point, that very dogmatic, very passionless, like kind of just steadfast, going through the motions of just the everyday task of a Jedi. But then coming to that decision was, wow, like that is pretty freaking bad, because it's all connected to her pupil, right? I mean, we know that the chimeras, that there's a connection there. They don't outright say it, but that's her pupil. I'm pretty much gonna nail that down. So she's trying to hide this, because if it comes back to her that she was basically responsible for this murder, she's kind of screwed too, plus the politics stuff. So she's got nowhere else to go. I guess she's got to do the worst thing possible, and she panics in this moment of weakness, I guess, and just has to pull this off. But yeah, you really feel bad for Saul. I mean, yeah, he's not the best guy as we've seen. But yeah, you're right, Dom. He definitely didn't deserve that. But this is one of those points where it's like, yeah, things are kind of tied up now. They did a good job of wrapping this up with this really cold thing that she did. But yeah, it was nonetheless shocking. But I kind of seen it playing out this way, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, the seeds were sown in episode 6 of this season, when she basically says she's going to do that, and then plays out in this episode. And I love the way it was like executed, with the sort of like the flashback to within the episode of showing her, apologizing to his corpse and then setting it on fire, giving him like a proper Jedi funeral, but also like covering up the evidence of how he died. It was a dark twist. There was a lot of talk about the Jedi as the villains. And while, I don't think the Jedi as a whole are villains, you can really make a compelling case that Vernestra Rwoh is, if not the villain, definitely an antagonist in this show. Ben, would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Something that's been running through my head. I'm just going to get it out there because I'm not been following the High Republic books. Obviously, probably one of the last High Republic books that I read was the one where Vernestra Rwoh was introduced way back when. I'm familiar enough with the character. Obviously, I've got a lot of stuff through osmosis in the fandom, and I know a lot of people really like this character. I do worry for their sake, and I do worry just in the sense of this is a radical departure from her character and a radical thing to do to her character. And I just similarly, we just brought up Luke, similarly to how people reacted to, obviously on a much smaller scale, but still I can imagine people being upset about Vernestra and being upset, like, why Leslie, why did you do this? Why did you get your wife to play this character and have her just be pretty much a massive antagonist, if not the main antagonist of this story, when you could have picked literally any other character? I'm not saying that because I personally, I'm not that attached to Vernestra, so I'm just kind of along for the ride, and this is kind of my first like real investment in Vernestra as a character. So I'm just like, okay, I'll see where this goes. I think it's interesting, like from a storytelling point of view, of taking this character, that the one character that everyone was really, they could live this long, that could be included, that was from the High Republic. Now they're in this show, and Ki-Adi Mundi could have filled this role, maybe, or literally any other Jedi. And I can see that as a criticism, just like, why do you have to do that to Vernestra? Why couldn't Vernestra just have a cameo and give the villain role to somebody else? I don't know. Are people saying that? Do people feel that way? I would be very curious to hear from the hardcore High Republic and Vernestra Rwoh fans, because it's a concern for me. But I hope my reading of that final moment with Yoda is, I think it's recompense. I think it is her going to Yoda going, I've screwed up, and maybe doing what Soul was trying to do, which is like, okay, I really screwed up and I need to tell somebody and I need to let all this out in the open. And obviously she knows about Chimere. She knows he's alive. She had this thing. She always had a Padawan that turned to evil, as she says. She doesn't need to know he's a Sith. And, so how that things, I think maybe she went and, told Yoda everything. And, or at least part of it. I think it's a cover up of a cover up in regards to Soul. You kind of have to, take it from that perspective. It's like Soul covered this up first. Vernestra's kind of cleaning up his mess. It's dirty what she did to him, but he kind of made his own bed a little bit. So, and then, in the first, and then you have to feel bad for Soul and say he wanted to go in the first place. When everything happened, he was going to go to the council and spill the beans. And none of this ever would have happened. But Indara's like, no, she's the blameless one that didn't do anything on Brenduck, but she decides to cover it up. Yeah. This is why you don't lie. This is why you're honest, okay? Yeah. This is why you lie, and then you have to keep lying to keep up the lie. It's a really bad thing.
It all comes down to a series of unfortunate events going all the way back to. That's the thing. Is like going into the series. It's like, oh, are we going to paint the Jedi in a really bad light? Are they going to be borderline evil by the end of the show or something? It's like, no, not really. They're basically just poor decision making skills that led to lying, that led to this, and it's just like the buck keeps on going down. I just keep passing this thing along to the point where we get to the prequels, and then that's where it all goes down.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought when I saw this is, this is the reason why the Jedi Order fell. Like, that was one of the, I think, messages behind the show, is they were trying to provide some exposition to the flaws within the Jedi Order, clearly. And this is one of the biggest ones, because you have, that irony there of this whole mess was partially created by Sol lying all of these years. And now you have Venestra going in and just lying on top of his lie instead of going back to the original truth of the situation. And I thought that was so ironic when she did that. And again, it's like good intentions. Like, Sol repeated so many times, I thought I was doing the right thing. I was doing the right thing. He seemed to die believing that he did the right thing, and yet clearly not. And I think Venestra, it's kind of the same thing, where she has good intentions. She's trying to protect the Jedi Order so that the Jedi continue doing the good that they are doing in their knowledge and defense that they're doing. But at the same time, it's like the ends don't justify the means when it comes to the light side of the Force. Like, you're either skirting towards the dark side, or you're allowing a foothold for the dark side to come in. Because what we discover when we get to the prequels is that it's the fact that the Jedi are a little bit shady in this way that allows Palpatine to seduce and manipulate Anakin. Because he can easily say, because as we've said many times, the Sith, from Maul to Sidious and Kylo Ren, they get what they want by telling the truth. They don't really need to lie. They just have to shine the light on the dark corners of the light side, quote unquote, users. And that provided an opportunity. So, now we have Osha, a former Jedi, perhaps going on a dark path because of the lies of the Jedi, just like we had, Anakin going along a dark path, and honestly, a situation where Luke could have easily fallen to the dark side because of the lie that Obi-Wan Kenobi told him as well. And thankfully, he was the one that actually got out, and hopefully Osha does too, but we'll see. So yeah, incredible irony, and the show, I think, did what I think the creators wanted to do, and show us those flaws of the Jedi, where while there might still be good intentions there, and they're not, necessarily psychopathic or, doing things out of anger and hatred like the Sith, they're looking for power in the way the Sith are, they're still, justifying means they shouldn't be justifying, and doing things they shouldn't be doing. And it allows those exploitable moments or places within what's going on.
I mean, Sol, there's the scene between May and Osha, right, where they're talking about what happened, and May is trying to get Osha to see the truth, and Osha has the line. And I've pulled up the episode on my phone here because I wanted to make sure I got the line right, because May's under the belief that Sol would blame her for the fire, which he did. And Osha says, he never blamed you. He tried to teach me to accept that someone I love could be capable of this level of destruction. That's a little bit of the telling the truth, but hiding the truth. Sort of like telling the truth, but manipulating it, telling the truth from a certain point of view, which is a very Jedi thing to do. It's a very Sith thing to do, but it's a very Jedi thing to do. Sol knows. Sol knows that what he did was wrong. He knows that the way things went down on Brendok was wrong. He is honest in his belief that taking May away was the right thing. Taking Osha away was the right thing. That she needed to become a Jedi. That was a good thing to do. But everything else that went down there, he knows was wrong, and that's what he's been grappling with, and he's still grappling with it in this episode, even in that like final confrontation in the courtyard where May, Osha, Kamir, and Sol, he's like, he's saying, I did the right thing. And then Osha like says, did you kill our mother? Did you do this? And he has to admit yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so he knows what he's doing. He can't admit it. It's a hubris thing. It's the Jedi having a problem with believing their own hype and not being able to admit their mistakes. And Sol is the one of all the Jedi who comes closest to being able to admit his mistakes. At the beginning of the series, right? Jackie asks him, like, why do you look at your old Padawan? And he's like, oh, we have to learn from the past or we're doomed to repeat it. So there's a real sort of, that like it's just sort of continuing this. And the things that make Osha decide to turn to the dark side are truths. I don't think May is actively trying to recruit her there, or Sol is trying to recruit her there, but they're forcing her to hear these painful truths. And when she hears these painful truths, she realizes, or she decides, she doesn't realize, she decides that her best response is to, give in to what they call her, to her negative emotions and, embrace life as a Sith acolyte. Let's go from there.
Yeah.
Speaking of May and Osha, bleeding the lightsaber crystal.
Woo!
This scene was awesome. This was so cool. This was so cool. Starrapter, this is something we've seen in the comics. We first read about it in the Ahsoka novel, and we've seen it pop up other places. How freaking cool was it to see it come to life on the screen here?
Oh man, yeah, it was great. It was great. Last time we seen this on screen was in Jedi Survivor, Dagan Gera going at it after coming out of the cryostasis there. But this is really just as cool because sure, there's different representations. You see a lot of people, whether it be Vader or whether it be Dagan Gera, like taking a look at the Kyber crystal. And even Kylo Ren does it in the Kylo Ren miniseries, like looking at the actual crystal and doing stuff. Or in this case, it's like, okay, crystals it gets the same point across. You do a really evil thing. If you channel your hatred, you could do this action. But to see it, I think it lends so much uniqueness to this case because the representation of it going from blue to red was really neat. Like the light side gets snuffed out. It's a really figurative kind of way of looking at it, like this object just being overtaken by the dark side. This object that was used by a Jedi gets overtaken by the darkness, and just the effects of it, the way it's just like shaking and just the way the colors bouncing off the object, it was just phenomenal. Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, and the saber afterwards felt a little Kylo Ren-y, and it's like it wasn't totally stable. It was a little bit wonky. Chris, we'll go to you. Like, what did you think of how they executed Osha's final turn to the dark side here?
I thought that it was extremely well done. Extremely. And I think that one of the best things is the juxtaposition with May pretty much turning to the light side in the same kind of moments. Like, I think it all started with that moment where May threw away the lightsaber and that very like Luke Skywalker like way. And there was a lot. See, I feel like this is how you evoke things in the original trilogy in a way that is an homage, and is archetypal, but not necessarily like a ripoff or a copy. Like I have on record saying many, many times I thought Snoke was too far, and the fact.
Can I say? They went way too far in this episode. Half the dialogue is from the freaking original trilogy or the other movies. It's all like come up with a new line.
Yeah,
Put
I don't know.
through thesaurus.com.
For some reason, this one worked for me. The Snoke one didn't work for me until we discovered he was kind of a puppet of Palpatine, and I'm like, okay, I kind of get why he would say the same thing. But this one, like, I thought it was good. And so I thought it started with May.
The saber throw was the saber throw. I dug that. I thought that was
good.
nice.
That was good.
That was good. And a couple of them I'm good with a couple of here and there's. You know, if Snoke had just given us one, it was I who blank.
Yes.
I'm like, all right, we can roll with that.
Yeah, that's too much.
But like, see you in hell, and there was a few there's a few other ones. Joy, strike him down, and your journey will be complete. I'm like, shut up, Manny. You can't say that line.
I love it. I freaking love it.
But when Vernestra says "leave us," I was like, "Ooh, powerful."
Yeah, it's hit or miss, I guess, on those ones. But for me, it was all hit for this one, and each one I was like, "Oh, that's a cool way to work that line in." So it started with that, and so that was great. And then you can see, you could see the rage and Osha building. You going back to her fight with May earlier, and I've seen her too before that, as well. And so they built it up really, really well. So you kind of knew what was happening. And gosh, when Soul's trying to make excuses for what he did to her, and she just says, "Stop talking." It's like you knew, like, okay, it's over. This guy's dead. That's it. You could see that kind of like unbridled rage about to pop off right there. And so it was a very brutal scene. I mean, you have moments in Star Wars where people burn and they get their limbs chopped off, and there's some pretty wild stuff that happens in Star Wars. Jackie's death was incredibly brutal. But yeah, just like literally just watching someone just crush somebody else's throat in that amount of time with that amount of emotion between the actors. Incredible job from both of them there. That has to go down as one of the most kind of brutal, violent, visceral scenes ever in Star Wars. That was something I definitely felt something. I mean, as the tear was just falling down Soul's eye, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like it was so emotionally overwhelming to watch that, even the second time that I watched it. And so that there was so much to this that by the time that you get to that moment where you're starting to look at the crystal and it's still blue, it's like what's going to happen because they're zooming in on the crystal, and I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go. It starts turning red. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're doing it. This is so amazing. It's like I didn't even need her to extend out the lightsaber and have it change colors. I thought she was going to turn it on and it was just going to be red. Like that's what I thought, because the crystal had already kind of turned red. But then to see it actually change colors as she had the extended, as we have an image on the screen on the YouTube version of this podcast, like of the color changing before our eyes in the blade as it's extended, like that was an incredible effect. And I'm one that I'm a little bit critical of the new lightsaber effects, of how now they have like physical sabers, and then they're a little bigger and they have actual light, and then they just add a little bit of effects to it to make it look less like a piece of plastic or whatever it is. Like I'm a little bit less of a fan of that than the original. Just have a little kind of stick and then completely like redo it with CGI. I still think that looked better than this. But with that being said, this one effect was done so well. It was absolutely incredible, the transition of the colors. I could not have imagined that looking more cool than it did. And just having something new with lightsabers, and we also have a little second of a light whip as well on this show, which is really cool. But having something new with lightsabers, but that still ties into lore from other things. It's such a rare and cool moment to see something for the first time in Star Wars, and so that was really cool. It's just like that first moment you see a double-bladed lightsaber, or you see a lightsaber for the first time as well, and New Hope. Like, it was so cool. So I loved it. I thought it was executed well, and I think just the emotional beats of it, aside from just the technical parts of it, were also just incredible leading up to that, with everything going on with May, everything going on with Osha, the whole journey that Saber took before getting to that moment. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. And as she's choking Soul, like he says to her, "It's okay." And the guys he still loves her to the end. He still loves her to the end, no matter.
He did
no
it out of
what.
love. He hurt someone out of love, and it's such a realistic thing. Like that's what I love about the show. I understand that this show, to a lot of people, doesn't have kind of some of the precision of the storytelling that some of the other Star Wars shows have, like Andor. And I understand that's one of the greatest criticisms of the show is maybe it could have been a 3-hour movie and that would have been better, as far as the precision of the storytelling and making sure every moment counted. But for me, the thread that they put in there of just the overlying idea that you can have good intentions and you can do things out of love and you can still screw up and hurt people because you're not just thinking about what the ramifications are of your actions and you're just doing things from the heart without thinking. Like, the message that's possible and that can happen, I think is really cool underlying message. And it saves the show for me from the lack of precise storytelling and precise emotional beats that happen at various points in the show. Like the fact that it still has the underlying message and they executed the big moments really well, like this of it, it's what still creates overall for me a really positive view of how this show was executed from a characterization point of view, from a character development point of view, and a dialogue and acting point of view, because I just think that's a cool message, because you see a lot of twisted things happen in Star Wars, but seldomly do you see something twisted in such a way that it's a character who you want to root for. You want to root for Soul. You know that he really does care. He really does love Osha. He really would do anything for her. But that's the problem, is at some point you got to let go. At some point you can't do everything. At some point you got to just let what happens. And that's the lesson that he learned. He tried too hard. He loved too much. And you saw that to the very end, that he still had that love, but it resulted in his demise. It resulted in turning someone to the dark side, and it resulted in a lot of other people dying and being scarred for life.
Yeah. That's what elevates the show. That's what keeps it going. It does miss on the precision, but the precision storytelling, but it's playing with these big ideas that make you want to come back and make you want to spend more time with these characters. One of the sort of big reveals in the episode is that May and Osha are not twins. They're not sisters. They're the same person. The Virgins in the Force on Brendok allowed the witches, Mother Anastasia in particular, it seems, to create life. Ben, what did you think of this reveal?
Basically happened exactly as I thought it would, because you have the moment where he reveals this, and there is a specific moment when he's talking about you were created, that they use the Force to create you, and there's a shot that goes directly to Chimere's face. And he's like, you can see the like, wait, what? the look on his face, like, wait, you can do that? And like the whole idea, because people were, as they were about every single thing about this show, complaining about, oh, how could these witches do this? Plagueis is supposed to be the one that found the power to create life, blah, blah, blah. And you kind of have to back up and go like, okay, Plagueis and Palpatine by default, not the most reliable narrator. You have to go back. It is a story a Jedi wouldn't tell you. But also I like the idea that, Plagueis didn't do it, or maybe he did, but he was doing it based on information that he learned, perhaps because his apprentice told him, hey, I found out about these witches that are all dead now that found the power to create life, and Plagueis becoming obsessed with that and leading to what we know happened later on. I just think it's really cool. I think it does. I'm glad that they kind of, because there was that whole thing being, there he is, that big creep with the big hands. It's great that I think they did kind of close the book on, because there was a lot of questions, about legitimate questions about like, well, how is this interface with Anakin? How does does this mean that Anakin is less special now, that there's other things? And it's just like, no, Anakin was different. Anakin was created by the Force. Nobody used the Force to create Anakin. Anakin was created by the Force in retaliation for something that Plagueis and Palpatine were doing. May and Osha were created by their mother. I mean, in the absence of just doing it the old-fashioned way, they used the Force to do it. And, that's really interesting. And also the fact that they're literally twins in a way. They are the exact same person, just split into two. They hit copy paste once and on the kid, and they made two instead of one.
Yeah. Well, and this lays out, I think, it's interesting that at the end of the season, both of the twins are still alive. One's with the Jedi, one's with the Sith. It lays out the sort of storyline going forward, because we see that quick shot of Plagueis, and now one of the twins, now Osha, is now like literally within arm's reach for him. So now he can begin to study what happened. He will probably want May, and given that, so he'll probably go looking for May. May's going to help Vernestra go looking for Osha. They're probably going to meet in the middle at some point, maybe in, let's say, the season 2 finale. And he'll want to study this. He'll want to understand this. It all ties in. And, I suspect Plagueis's way of creating life is going to be different, more twisted, more Sithy than what the witches were up to. The witches, for all of their flaws, seem to genuinely care about May and Osha. So there's probably something to that keeps that specific power out of reach for the Sith and their particular way of going about things. But it rolls out the red carpet for season 2 for Plagueis to be a more active contributor to the storyline.
Yeah, because you look at this character and it's like, all right, what was the point of this? What was the point of having this guy just creepily in the background observing what was going on for who knows how long? And
it was a personal request.
And you get to see, like, drawing the lines here. Yes, the deal with bringing these people to life out of the Force or nothingness, creating life. So it's a brilliant way of future-proofing. All right, calm down, everybody. Like, we got this. We got this. We thought about this. We're not going to just willy-nilly throw Anakin under the bus or anything like this with this storyline. This is all going to play. It's just if the story continues, it bodes well for the confidence level that I have with Leslie Headland to play around with a character that so many people love. They got the look down right. At least the look looks really menacing and horrifying. I think they got that right. So. Because there's talks like it could have been another species or something. But they went with moons. That's cool.
I'm so glad that they did. I'm so glad.
Because we had that discussion and I thought, well, there's a strong chance. I know Hannah, she's not here to defend herself, but she was adamant that, that it wasn't Plagueis. She was right to her defense. He was not, that Chimere was not Plagueis or any established character that we know of so far. But that was a real possibility. I like the fact, and I appreciate the fact that they're like, nah, we're going to commit to this. That, maybe we didn't have the budget this season to have Plagueis, a big old giant evil immune dude hanging around in every scene. But we will tease him. We will acknowledge that he's here and that he is in the cards. And that if there is a season 2, he will be back. And yes, he is a big scary moon dude, and I'm glad that is the case.
It's absolutely amazing. So speaking to the Plagueis and then also the twins and like all these, well, the not twins now, like the whole thing's so interesting because one of the first reactions that I had when we discovered that there was 2, not 1 character that Medlis Denberg was playing, my first reaction was, is this the same character who has kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde like personality to them. Like that was kind of the first thing that I thought. And when they were pinning Osha for something May had done, I thought, oh, maybe it was the same person. It's just that Osha and May are kind of two people in the same head or something like that. So that was my initial concept. And then the whole concept of twins came, and I'm like, okay, well, that makes a lot more sense, you know. The other one wasn't out of the picture. So then to go full circle and be back up, oh, no, you are the same person. You're just in two bodies. It's kind of similar to that original concept. And, you know, there's a lot to be fleshed out there. That concept of, you know, one person, two bodies. Like there's a lot of places that they could go with that in season 2 and beyond and in future lore of Star Wars. That's fascinating. I mean, one of the threads that you can follow is, well, why is Anakin necessary when, you know, Osha and May could be essentially like Anakin and Virgins in the Force in the same way. And it's like, well, maybe having two of them instead of one is a bit accidental, unintended, and problematic because they're going to fight with each other and maybe their power is kind of split between the two of them or this or that. I mean, in one way you could view it as that you have that kind of classic aphorism, the line between good and evil goes through every person. And it's like, well, what if your evil version and your good version is split out into two bodies in a Jekyll and Hyde like way, but it's two. And then what if it's possible that they could switch back and forth, you know, and then the other one could be evil and the other one could be good. That's kind of what we saw. And so that kind of seesaw going on, maybe they both can't be evil and they both can't be good. And as a result of that, you can't manipulate them fully for the ends of the Jedi or the ends of the Sith. So there's so many places they could go with it. And it's so interesting. The last thing too that I thought of just now was the why would creating life and trying to create life in this way result in two people but one person in two bodies? It reminds me of the fact that a lot of times when we try to create life in our universe with our own science and we do something called IVF, in vitro fertilization, it creates twins and quadruplets. It's a very common thing for that to happen. And so I kind of wonder if it's kind of those are the mechanics that they were going for of, you know, this is kind of like a forced version of in vitro fertilization. And thus, you know, that kind of, you know, different other than natural way of doing it. In this case, certainly preternatural, but creates kind of something like that happening. So it's really there's so many interesting places they could go with this. It's and they barely touch on it. So season 2, let's go, writers, have fun with that one.
Speaking of season 2, the episode sort of wraps up with the decision for Osha to go with Kamir and May to stay behind, having her mind wiped by Kamir. Starrapter, I'll just go to you. What did you think of this resolution for the twin storyline?
Yeah, this is something that I thought we were getting a little earlier in the season, actually, because when we first see May go on the ship with Saul, she switches out in episode 5, the clothing, and she's on the ship. I thought that's kind of where this was going, where they were going to go back to the Jedi Temple and she would be undercover, you know, in a Jedi Temple, gathering information and all this good stuff. So we ended up there again, but this time more definitive. But I mean, I'm really trying to rack my brain, trying to figure out, have we seen an instance of this where somebody's mind gets completely wiped like this? I mean, we've seen mind trick many times. It's very quick, acute type of thing, but it doesn't persist. So that was the first thing. And going back to the bleeding of the Kyber crystal, this episode did a great job, and this series in general has done a great job of just like exploring more of the Force in ways we haven't seen it utilized before. So that was the first thing. I don't know if you guys have read anything or anything like how that could actually happen. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I my assumption is that it's some sort of extension of the mind trick. You know, when in the Clone Wars, when Obi-Wan, Mace, and Anakin all together mind trick Cad Bane, and they're like going into his brain, and it really seems like it's sort of a torture. It feels like the Jedi, if left unchecked, could really get into somebody's head and really create problems for them. And so the idea that this is this might just be sort of an extension of that. Are her memories buried in there somewhere? I suspect they are.
Yeah.
And I think I think the show even suggests as much in the when May and Osha are saying they'll find each other.
Yeah.
I don't think they want to find each other just so that May cannot know who Osha is. I think they want to find each other and be reunited. So I think it's in there. That's baked into the DNA for season 2.
Yeah, but overall, go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead.
Tragic. I mean, it's just absolutely tragic. Like to see May just not even know she has a sister with how much they were connected on that level. Like that's how powerful the stranger was enabling to do that. I also want to just point out the simplistic things that good Star Wars does with visualization of allegiance and different things, like the allegiance to the light of May wearing like the white garb uniform. And now we have Osha wearing the black. It's very easy to see, but it's still cool to like we see that visual swap, like it's in the back of our brain. Like, yes, this is what's happening here. And then going on the Osha side of things, this was cool. This is like the alternate version of The Last Jedi in a way, where it's like, oh, we got Rey and Kylo both actually agreeing to do something, and then at the end there with the hand on the lightsaber, both what's that all about? I'm very curious to see about this like dark romance, like Sith stuff going on here. It's a very cool way to end it, especially a very evocative of like rhyming with a lot of things in Star Wars, like looking out over a body of water at the suns or something. Like it was a very good way of ending, a very beautiful way of ending it. But this is where we finally get to this point. The thesis statement is complete essentially, because it's the Acolyte is the name of the show. We have seen how one becomes the Acolyte. As simple as that is put, the mission has been complete. The first chapter is complete. So now this is a great way to kind of end things and getting into that hopeful season 2 in the future. I think it lays really good seeds for that, obviously. But yeah, good way of just switching. This is the point. The twins going from one allegiance to the other right at the end here worked well for me.
Yeah, I agree. All right. I think it's time. One more time for season 1 of The Acolyte. It's time for your favorite segment. It's time for my favorite segment. It's time once again for Ben's Connection Corner. Connections in the corner with Ben. It's Ben's Connection Corner. Do.
How's it going, everybody?
Ben's Connection Corner is filmed in front of a live studio audience. All right, Ben, what have you got for us?
All right. I'm kind of sad. Last time for a while. Dang, I'm gonna miss it. Not really. So off the top, we got a great. We didn't even talk about the great like space asteroid field chase.
Yeah,
off the top of the episode, I think was really great.
Amazing
things, and also I think they blew out their budget with this last episode because they're like
seriously
a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
A little bit of everything, but I like the little targeting computer that Soul has, very similar to the Millennium Falcon targeting computers we've seen fast, which it makes me think like, what was he gonna do there? Like, it's a targeting computer. What is he trying to shoot her down? Like, I like that this episode at least toyed with the idea of just like, we don't know what Soul's gonna do. Like we've seen him go dark a little bit, and we're kind of worried about him, and we kind of are he's a little bit unpredictable now. So that was really cool. We got basically for the first time in live action, I think, Force Repulse. For those of you who played The Force Unleashed back in the day, this force power where you just kind of like and you just blow out everything. That's exactly what Soul does, and it's really cool and really cool effect to see falling on screen. And I loved it, like he throws his lightsabers at him, and he's like, I'm going to put my lightsaber away. That's how powerful I am. And just the fact that Soul pretty much owns Chimera and that things, it's really cool. We talked about bleeding of the crystals. It's a relatively new thing actually in canon, introduced in. It was actually first mentioned in Ahsoka, the novel, 2016. It's the fact that Ahsoka got her lightsabers from bleeding crystals or crystals she anti-bled. I don't know how I can't remember the story fully, but and then it was, of course, Charles Soule brought it up in the Darth Vader comics, how Darth Vader first got his lightsaber, and then we get the core tunnel. Osha mentions, not Osha, but May mentions that she fell into and got sucked into a core tunnel, which is basically what happens to Luke in Empire Strikes Back.
Yep.
Even to the point when they step into it and it lights up, similar to how the one in Bespin kind of lights up as he's walking through it. It's kind of cool. Okay, this one's interesting. So Chancellor Drellick, who we see at the end of this episode, finally, we got a new Chancellor of the Old Republic, if you will. He is a Tarsunt species. We first saw these species it was first introduced in the novel Lost Stars. We first saw this species in The Force Awakens. Ironically, also the species of Chancellor Villichem of the New Republic. So we've had at least two, an Old Republic and a New Republic Chancellor, both of the Tarsunt species. So I guess they had a bunch of humans. They decided we're going to elect this specific alien. So that's it. Oh, okay, Starrapter, did I miss anything? Please enlighten me. We're in the connection now, so you're actually able to contribite.
Hey,
dang it!
Anybody else tries to contribute a connection, Ben shuts it down. But
we're in the segment. We're in the segment.
We're in the
segment, and Starrapter put in a request at the beginning of the episode. That's the procedure. Okay, you put in a request, you show up with the thing. That's how it works here. He's doing it right.
Excuse me, I'm the senior tie-in correspondent here at the Star Wars Underworld. All right, so you did a good job. You did a good job, Ben. I mean, the stuff with the target computer, I will say, I mean, it's not really a connection per se, but I at least want to bring it up. Just the idea of the beginning of the episode when you have the Cortosis helmet that Osha is wearing, and she goes into this like trance. It reminds me of Luke from Bespin, going, I need to go find Han and Leia, they're in danger, that sort of thing. And then Chimere's like, no, it's actually going to happen, and they go off on their way. So I thought that was really cool. Yeah, the Empire references in this are great.
Yes.
And I love all of the recycled dialogue. I love it all. I love the "see you in hell." It's great.
Yeah.
It's very George Lucas. Honestly, that stuff was all over the prequels. It was all over the Clone Wars. Filoni did it. George did it. I love that Leslie Headland also was just like, yeah, we're gonna do this stuff.
I loved to leave us. I loved "See You in Hell, Jedi." And there was like one or two other ones that as I was watching on the rewatch, I'm like, okay, yeah, I like that. But the one that like stood out to me as a bridge too far, as I said earlier, was strike him down and complete your journey. I was like,
but no, I love that. I love that though. That's like a thing that Sith say that it's not a repeated dialogue. It's Palpatine in Return of the Jedi says that because he heard Plagueis say that, and Chimera is saying it because he heard Plagueis say that.
There's a moment where every Sith master sits down the apprentices like, okay, when it comes to time to recruit your own apprentice, these are our words. You have to say it specifically this way. Strike them down and join by my side. Now say it with me. Strike them down and join. I think that's the scene we're gonna get in season 2. And
then you create a scenario where you can say it was I who did the thing.
And let me interject real quick because this is a thought that Ben just spurred into my head. Do we know, or obviously it's not plain, but Chimera and Plagueis, have they interacted? Is that his master? Does he have any idea that he's there?
No idea.
What do we think about that? What would we like to speculate on?
Season 2. That's what we need. Season 2. They can't just have him Plagueis show up and then that's not explain what he has to do with the entire story.
I mean, it literally. At this point, it could be anything. It could be Plagueis is just there. That's his master, and Plagueis just stays out of the sunlight or something like that. He's just like a vampire hiding in the shadows, and he doesn't want Osha or May to see him. And then, or it also could be that he's creeping on Chimere, and he doesn't know, and maybe we'll be enlightened to a plot line where Plagueis showed up at the last minute to maybe take out Chimere, and then Chimere's leaving, and I love the ideas.
You know how I have two thoughts about this. The first thought, the really cool thought, is that you know how like Kylo Ren is talking to Darth Vader's mask and in the sequels, and perhaps the stranger's helmet has kind of a similar effect on him. I mean, we see what happens when Osha puts it on. She almost like somebody's controlling her for a moment, and she's So I wonder if in some way Plagueis is controlling Osha and Chimere through the mask in some way. There's something going on there. So that makes me interesting. Now, we also have to remember, just as a kind of funny mnemonic, Hugo Damask as well, which is I don't know if it's the canon other name for Plagueis. But used to be. So there's that. Now, the other thing that's going on here is I feel like that whole speech that Chimere gives about talking about how he needs an acolyte and how he, the Jedi would call him Sith, those speak to me as, simply being in a similar spot as Dooku, where, you're the apprentice, but you want to be the master. The first step is to find your own apprentice, but officially the name for that is Acolyte. So I think that based on that evidence of just that conversation, that the situation is that Chimere is Plagueis' apprentice, and as is typical with acolytes, there isn't necessarily a relationship between the acolyte and the master, and so it's just two one-to-one relationships, with the connection being the person in the middle, which would be Chimere. So I think Chimere was trained by Plagueis, and I think that Chimere is now looking to train Osha to attempt to overthrow Plagueis, which he'll be unsuccessful at. It'll result in both of their deaths, and then Plagueis will then find a new apprentice, which most likely will be Palpatine.
And I was hoping we would get this. I was hoping we would get this name drop right at the end. Vernestra was talking about. I forget. I've only watched the episode once, so I can't even quote it right now. She goes along the lines of hinting that he's the pupil, and I thought for sure you're going to go help me find my pupil Ren. I really was expecting that, because if along the lines of what you're saying, Chris, he doesn't necessarily have to die, but Chimere could get away from Plagueis and start his own cult, which is going to call the Knights of Ren someday or something, or like Maul. Yeah, we've seen this happen before, so. That's what I'm thinking of. Like when you ask me what I'm thinking about, like how this ended with the with the twins being somewhere else. That's where my thing was, is like, I need a season 2, because I have to see how Chimere and Osha fit with Plagueis, because we know like they have to be somewhere at a certain point in time. So to leave it vague without that continuation is going to kill me if we don't get it. So
yes, I agree. I will riot. This had better happen. I'm going to picket Disney if this does not happen. Oh my gosh. You can't just have one of the most interesting and anticipated characters in the history of Star Wars show up for 2 seconds in such a dark shot that you can't even see it unless you digitally enhance it. To just have that be it. Like, you can't do that to us.
I'm just picturing I'm picturing George Lucas is watching the show, being like, You're gonna greenlight this, White. Yeah, you're gonna actually do this, because you brought in Darth Plagueis. You brought in something that I really like. So,
man, see, if they truly intended this to be a limited series like Obi-Wan Kenobi without a second season, then you gotta have the main Plagueis plots in season 1. And I kind of was expecting that at first. I was expecting that because we always get most of the shots that are in the trailers from the first few episodes. You never know what they're hiding behind those in the last 6 or more. And, you know, it was a situation going into the season where I was thinking, okay, like episode 3, episode 4, episode 5, when is Plagueis going to show up? What is this whole thing going to tie into the Sith line that we know about? And the fact that not only did it not show up until the last episode, but it like was only in there as just kind of like practically an Easter egg.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that just speaks to me of, okay, the intentionality behind this is multiple seasons, despite the fact that it's a self-contained story with what ultimately is the fall of Soul. That's basically what this season was. It was the fall of Soul. We still have that overarching thing that has to get expanded upon, and it's clearly intended to be that way. So I just, season 2, it has to happen, or otherwise, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to just have that little Easter egg in there. Like, this is not Jackson, this is Plagueis.
I'll just say, everybody circle Friday, August 9th on your calendars. That is the Disney Entertainment Showcase at D23. 7 p.m. Pacific time. I'll be in the Honda Center, ready to find out what we're what we're going to see for the future. And I suspect that that'll factor into any announcements that are made. Well, this has been an extended, rambling but enjoyable final edition for this season 1 finale of the Acolyte, Ben's Connection Corner, the Acolyte edition. That's what Ben's Connection Corner. Connections in the corner with Ben. It's Ben's Connection Corner. Do.
How's it going, everybody?
Ben's Connection Corner is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Yeah, I get to watch it again because I always listen to this on audio. So it's always a treat getting to watch it every once in a while.
Awesome.
There you go. Before we do final thoughts and then get out of here, let's hit a couple of soupies real quick. First one comes from Joel Davis. Says, okay, serious question. I ask this every week, but now that the show is done, I'll ask again. Chances of this getting a season 2, high or low?
High.
To quote K2SO, I will say it's high. Very high.
Yeah. So even before we seen this season, I already assumed it was going to be multiple, just from the fact that are a few reasons, right? You pour all this money into all these sets overseas, right? You've seen that with Andor, all the care. They got multiple seasons, 2 seasons for that. But it's a new era, and you're going to go into the future. We don't really see much coming out past Andor season 2 besides Mandalorian stuff. So I'm wondering about like what's going to happen with Disney Plus. I know there's been some hubbub about that lately. Like, oh, are they scaling back? I would assume that they're going to try to have at least one live action series, no matter what, with Star Wars at least once a year. So this could be the next thing that's basically going to live on Disney Plus as they ramp up with movies and stuff. Is, hey, every 2 years we can at least look into another season of Acolyte, or however long it would take. I just feel like it'd be too many resources that they already invested with these costumes and these sets in this brand new era to just cut it at one season. That's just
Yeah, I agree. There's so much has been sunk into this that they can reutilize some of it, so why not go for more? Next one comes from Joseph Cooper, who says, should David Harewood have been in the show more? Yes.
Yep.
That would be nice.
Hell to the yeah.
Yes.
But season 2, all over season 2. Let's go.
All over season 2, indeed. All right. Thank you for the questions. I feel like we gave really brief answers, but I think that hammers on the point.
Yes. Next question.
Spoken a lot about those ones.
Season 2, more David Harewood. Yes. All right, let's go around the table one last time and give some final thoughts and scores out of 10. Ben, why don't you start us off again? Final thoughts, score out of 10 for the Acolyte, the episode.
Yeah. So, like I said, I have, let's just say, frustrations with the show overall. I wish it had been more consistent. I wish it had been more solid in the writing. But it had some huge bright spots for me. This episode being one of them. And I do say, I think the entire episode, I think, is a masterpiece. It's really well paced, some great action sequences, great wow moments. Like I've never had my jaw drop that much than when Mr. Darth Plagueis showed up on screen. Like that was a jaw dropping moment. And then you have everything from the Force, the bleeding of the lightsaber to Soul's death. It was a roller coaster of an episode. And there's very few things I can think of that like I would change about it at all. So I mean, I feel like I can't give this thing anything less than like a 9.5. Like it's a stellar episode. It's the kind of episode that I think is worthy of the finale. I think it's the kind of episode that this was the show I was expecting, and on its own, this is stellar Star Wars.
Dominic community.
Stellar Star Wars getting a 9.5 from Ben. Starrapter, over to you. Final thoughts, score out of 10.
Yeah, this did what a finale needed to do. It ties up most of the storylines. It really adds to the emotional moments by having these characters we've lived with for several hours at this point. It's given us really great action set pieces. Hannah was talking earlier in the episode about just like, these finales, this is where it all comes together. And I agree. And, it just gives me more excitement for the future, but it also satisfies me for what we've gotten so far. But on everything from the music to the sound to the choreography to the acting, to the dialogue, I got to give it a 9 out of 10. This is going to be up there with episode 5. I still don't know which one I like more, but it's darn good Star Wars, period. So,
all right, Chris, your final thoughts and score out of 10.
Yeah, this was definitely my favorite episode of the series. Absolutely incredible end to the series. Just a lot of energy, a lot of exciting things happening, and just a really well, written and constructed episode on top of all those amazing moments that it had. Just perfection to the show building up to this. And again, the overwhelming reaction that, I had after watching it was, oh man, here we go. This is just the beginning. This is just a setup for so much more. And I really, really hope we do get to see it. So yeah, very, very, this show satisfied me. Certainly. It gave me all the things that I wanted to see. But it did do it in a very managed way that I would like to see them delve much deeper into, and I do feel like it will be a shame if we don't do that. So for me, I'm going to give this an 11 out of 10 because I have many 10s out of 10s I've given episodes, and this is my favorite. So I'll give that mark of 11 out of 10. This is above and beyond. This is perfect, beyond perfection. This is perfection and then some on top.
I gave episode 3 a 10 out of 10. And I think this was better. But like the season has like, I feel like so much has happened, and like the season has been a roller coaster along the way that like I don't know what to, this is one of the few times that like I'm sort of like genuinely unsure what to give the episode. And so in that sense, I'll just default to my gut instinct and I'll go 10 out of 10 for this episode. I thought this season, as we've talked about, has had some ups and downs. It's had some rocky roads, but I kept saying if every episode could have been like this, I think the season would have been perfect. So in that standpoint, I think I have to give it a 10 out of 10 because if this is what I wanted, then they delivered it. So perfect. No notes.
There we go.
Maybe a few less what should we call it? Direct callbacks in the dialogue. Could have stood for a few less of those.
Minor.
But everything else about the episode was fantastic, from the action to the dialogue to the performances to just the way it was exploring the themes and the trials and tribulations of the Jedi. So loved it. 10 out of 10 from me. And with that, we will begin to wrap things up for this week.
All right. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching this episode of the Star Wars Underworld Podcast and listening as well. Make sure you follow us at the SWU on social media for other amazing, great stuff throughout the week and all updates on our programming. Special thanks to our guest, Starrapter, for joining us tonight. Thank you so much, Chris.
Oh, thank you so much for having me once again. Being on a finale episode of a Star Wars show is something that for the Star Wars Underworld is a great experience. It's a great experience, all the hype. I've been talking about this episode a lot. I talked about it on Tractor Beam. We go live every Wednesday at 9 o'clock Eastern time. It's going to be Matthew on his own for a week or two while I'm gallivanting around California next week. So, yeah, you can expect some coverage from my first San Diego Comic-Con. You can find me on Twitter, hanging out with some of these guys around here. This should be fun time. And youtube.com/Starrapter is where you'll find my weekly uploads on various things in my own podcast, Outer Rim Transmission. But thanks so much, and looking forward to seeing you guys next week.
Fantastic. And you can follow Starrapter on social media at Starrapter. Make sure you check it out. Dominic, thank you so much for hosting.
Oh, it's my pleasure, as always. This was great fun to break down this episode. I love talking about it. Finales are always special, and this one was in particular. And like Chris said, like Starrapter said, all of us might be together next week for Comic-Con,
yes.
except Hannah. Hannah's staying in Australia, sadly. We couldn't get her to get over to San Diego, but we'll all be around, and there's going to be... I don't know. It's feeling a little celebration-esque for at least for us, and hopefully we'll be able to provide some pretty cool and fun and interesting coverage for everybody from Comic-Con. So and it's not, they're not going to go on strike, and we're going to have to hold the coverage for 6 months like we did last year. I had 2 interviews that just sat on my phone for months on end. Nobody could listen to them. They stopped it. One of them, the book came out before they could play the interview that was previewing the book. I don't know what to tell you. Anyways, it was likely not going to be the case this year. But yeah, going to be fun. I can't wait to do all this again from San Diego next week.
And you can follow Dominic's adventures as he travels internationally at Dominic J25 on social media. Ben, thank you so much for hosting as well.
Oh, it was an absolute pleasure, as always. And, okay, first things first. I am pleased to confirm, this thing's really heavy now. It is finished.
Let's go.
Or at least kinda. It needs some finishing touches, but as you can see, it's pretty well there. It's pretty well. It needs some extra details and some stickers added as you do, but yeah, it's actually, you know what? Well, actually, no, there's no space in that. I gotta make room up there. That'll happen later when we come back from Comic-Con.
You have to start hanging things from your ceiling.
Yeah.
Yes. But as you said, Comic-Con next week. My first ever Comic-Con. I think you too, right, Starrapter? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Heck
so
yeah.
First timer is going to be a lot of fun, and hey, if anyone out there, if you're heading to Comic-Con, definitely hit us up. Would love to see as many of you guys as possible out there, because in the absence of celebration, this is our best chance to see all of you wonderful people. So yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Publishing panel. Meet us at the publishing panel. I think we're all gonna hopefully try to be there.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
Thursday, 4:15 in the Ballroom 20, which apparently is a 4,000 capacity theater.
That's a big one.
It's the second biggest theater in San Diego Comic-Con. Yeah,
that's great. That's great.
Publishing and Outlaws. Publishing and video games.
Yeah, it's got the cast. E. Bradley Baker. Yeah, all those guys.
So
cool.
Sick. So cool. Awesome. You can follow Ben on social media and his adventures at Interstate at Ben Hart with no E. You can follow me at Seekell, and of course, thanks as well to Hannah for joining us earlier. You can follow her at the Raeside. For those listening, RAE side is how you spell that. Thanks to everybody who has subscribed to our channel. If you haven't, make sure you punch that subscribe button. Thanks to all the fantastic people who sent us super chats tonight and all of our channel members who help make this all possible. Thanks to everybody that is subscribed on podcast apps and everyone that left a review. And if you haven't, make sure that you do. Thanks to everybody that is over on our Discord, giving us hashtag Ask the SWU questions and hanging out with us throughout the week. And if you're not over there, of course, you can just follow the link in the description and the show notes, and that'll send you right over to our server over there. Thanks to all the people who follow us on Threads at the SWU. Those are the people we are most grateful for. You guys win. Of course, check out all those other fantastic things we got going on throughout the week on the Star Wars Underworld Network. We mentioned Tractor Beam. We also have Iron Cannon on Mondays, as well as on other channels, Tales from Beyond the Galaxy and the Raeside. Check it out. So we will see all of you next week. Some people, we will literally see you next week, and we're so excited for that. For Hannah and Chris and Dom and Ben, my name is Chris, and may the Force be with you.
So I did something that I try to never do during the show, which is I actually checked my phone and I was like replying to something while Ben held up the Falcon. So I have no idea if it's actually done or not. I'm just gonna have to trust him and take his word for it.
I gaslighted you.
Yeah.
It's not really done.
Yeah, it's not really done.
They're all pretending.
He just held up a big pile of pieces.
Yeah. It's all wrong.
It's a wrap.